on the last chapter, lessons and warnings, I'll just touch a couple of things you touched right now, but I would like for you to elaborate on this because I think it's very important. And I'll quote page 252. The originator achiever will possess the temperament that overcomes setbacks, often huge ones. They will do so by facing facts, often uncomfortable ones, but refuse to be broken by them. To do so involves possessing and displaying certain characteristics, persistent, of course, but combined with adaptability, flexibility, and perseverance. So I would like to touch this because most of the business and the statistics tell that 90% of business fail. And like you said, sometimes you might lose money in the short term, make money in the long, like you mentioned about the case study of Barbican. But on this case particular, what I love is the way you put it, is the facing facts, often uncomfortable ones. And of course, you were in a lot of boards, big ones. I'm sure there were a lot of fights, different opinions. And like you said, compliance in the board is extremely difficult because people have different opinions. And the bigger is the organization, the biggest the challenges. So if you could elaborate a bit on this topic, and of course, this is the lessons and warnings, this part of the chapter, what would be the lessons and warnings that you highlight for young leaders, young entrepreneurs, or people just listening us, because this can be applied to family, can be applied for a lot of things in life.
Well, I think of those points, facing facts and the really difficult ones. Early on in his project in Afghanistan, Rory Stewart knew that he was going to run out of money. And he said to his father, the money's going to run out, we're going to have to close it down. And his father said to him, look, what you've done so far is remarkable. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And if it closes, it closes. But accept the fact that it is in a very difficult position. You've done everything you can. You are doing everything you can. And now see what happens. This is enough to make Rory say, right, I won't give up. He flew to meet various people who he thought might help. And he said, this is what we've done. We've run out of money. I'm not taking any money. This is what we're doing. Can you help? And 2 or 3 of them said, yes, of course. But if he hadn't faced that fact, he wouldn't have got that response. And there was another case with the European Union Youth Orchestra. We found, that is on the board, that the European Union was changing the basis on which institutions like the EUIO was being funded. And we said, well, if you change the rules to this, we will have to close. It's perfectly simple. We will not trade insolvently. And this regime will not allow us to continue. So then we looked at one another and said on the board, we said, well, I think we've got to go public on this. I said, really? We'll make a bit of a noise. We did. They said, yeah. We said, yes. So we made it public and said the EUIO may have to close because of the way the EU is changing its funding. And within days, the musical world responded, starting with the members of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, many of whom had their experience in the EUIO. And they signed a message to the German Federal Culture Minister saying, you cannot let the EU do this. And suddenly there were messages from all over the world saying this mustn't happen. And the EU then changed the funding back to where it was. So that is 2 things. One, we faced the fact, we recognized the fact, we faced that we would have to close, and we were then honest and we went public. And because of all the other things we'd done, the response was then fantastic. But so never duck the facts. And even when it's inconvenient, I sometimes say one of the most important things people have to have is a sense of danger. That is when the risk coming towards you, and it's usually inconvenient and you don't want to know about it. The risk coming towards you is so great that you must at least say what is going on. Now, we didn't run away from the EU funding crisis. We faced it. And because of that, it was solved. So that, I think, is flexibility and perseverance. So there's never a straight line with the vision. The vision's there, but you have to do that the whole time. And that doesn't matter so long as the vision is still intact.
So one of the parts of the book is the creativity and innovation. So you touched the importance of facing the facts, perseverance, and being very, very open to manage risk, and as well to understand the risks, because if you don't look at the risks and if you don't face the facts, definitely you'll not change the problems. So one of the questions I have is, in the book you touched this, but I would like for you to share with the audience is, so if you are running an organization, you need to keep changing, you need to keep innovating, and you need to be creative because, of course, a business model changes. There's trends, there's, like you said, funding mechanisms that change from one day to the other, and you have to be prepared for all the risks that come out of that. So from your experience on boards and with leaderships and teams, where do you put the creativity and innovation on this part?
I think you have to be open to it. I think as far as the board is concerned, I think a board has to be aware if they are not receiving from the executives sufficient ideas for progress development. So that a supervisory board can encourage the executives to be more imaginative, to take more risks. On the other hand, if you have an executive team that isn't capable of formulating these ideas, well, then there's also a lesson to be learned from that. But the idea of innovation always has to be on the agenda on the part of the board. As far as the executives are concerned, at the Barbican, we were always, every 2 to 3 years, saying, what does the artistic policy look like? It mustn't be the same as what it was 2 to 3 years ago. How is it going to be different? How is it going to be expressed? And in the case, if you think of a long-term impact of change and innovation, on the BBC, when Newsnight was founded 43 years ago, that was an absolute innovation in the way that reporting of the world on television was done by the BBC. That has lasted for 43 years. Now that's an idea which was implemented and had a profound impact, not just on the way BBC did news and current affairs, but on the way that, for example, the Channel 4 did. This is an idea which spreads through into the practice of journalism on television as a whole. That is a terrific impact, I think.
Yeah, this is very, very powerful and very, very important, because if you don't really look at these things, you actually get in the rabbit hole and you really get lost.